everyone, welcome to Painting Crafty. If you're new here, I'm Melanie, and for my returning art friends, I'm so glad you're taking another art break with me today. Today I'm going to be showing you step by step of how to create this honeybee with a little hive. I'm going to start with the drawing steps, and then I'll show you some simple watercolor techniques of how to put this together. Now this little bee is inside of a frame, and I'm going to show you how I did that too, how I put that in my frame. For those of you who might like to have a little help with drawing, because I know not everyone likes to draw, you can go to my Ko-fi page, and that's like a Patreon page, and there I have an inexpensive sketchbook membership that I include all of my line drawings. This is what a line drawing looks like. You can easily copy that off and then just go ahead and trace it. There's nothing wrong with tracing. Sometimes it just makes a quick process of doing an art break. Well, we have all that said, let's go ahead and start with the drawings process. I'm going to go ahead and show you a quick sketch option of how to do your bee. I like to go ahead and start with a line down the middle. This just is going to help me line up my bee so I have my body correct. I'm going to start with the top here for my bee. So I'm going to start with a sad face shape here for the top of my bee. And then I'm going to put this line in at the bottom. I'll save that spot for the pointed end at the end. This is going to be the widest part of my body. Now, depending on how wide this is, depends on how short and stubby your little bee might be. If you're going to do a bumblebee, you might want to do shorter and wider. So this is the top here. I'm going to lightly connect my lines here. This line you want to make a little bit light. So this is going to end up looking a little bit like a candy corn shape is what it looks like. Now that I have this part in, I can go ahead and put my little point end in because it is smaller than this area here. So I'm going to still line it up and put the bottom part on. There, I have my little bee shape done. Now let's put the top part in. The bee top part has got this rounded here. I'm going to call them little cheeks. If you look here, it kind of looks like little cheeks. So we're going to puff them out. We're going to make it a little bit curved on the side. And then when I make that line across, I want to make sure it has a smile face shape. And by drawing it that way, it's going to give it more of a contour, and it looks like your bee is more rounded and less flat. Now the next shape we're going to put on is this one here underneath my body. So I'm going to come out again, do that little bit of a rounded shape on the side, and then go ahead and connect it with another smile face. And there we have that part done. Now let's come down and make another part. This is going to be a black area. So we're going to come out, we're going to round it around. It's similar to size about the one above. So we're going to come around and round it there, and then we're going to do that smile face. Now we have a series of 3. So we have the 3, they're going to come in. So I'm going to start with one line here or a bump, and I'm going to do this bump here, and I'm going to do another one like that. And then I'm going to add the 3rd one in. And now all of these get connected with a smile face contour line that comes across. Okay, we have that piece done, and then this is our bottom one. I just want to make sure I'm adding the rounded part here at the end so it continues on with that curved shape. And there we have the body of our bee done. Now our bee is going to get some antennas and some different arms. Let's just go ahead and pencil those in right away. I'm going to put an antenna up here. I'm just curving them in with little short lines like so. And then for these arms, I'm just doing a little squiggly bit that's going to come up. I'm not drawing much detail in there. This is on this quadrant right down here at the section of the body for the arms. They're going to come up. And then let's go ahead and put his wings in. So his wings kind of look, let's see if I can draw this a little darker so you can see it. They kind of look a little bit longer like a dragonfly wing, that shape, versus a butterfly one, where butterflies would be a little bit shorter or a different shape. So this has more of an angular wing. It's going to start in his body, and this side is going to be connected on the top. And then we're going to go up with this shape, bring it back in, and then we're going to do that bottom wing. It's going to come out and then angle it back in. Is where we're going to do it. Now to measure that so they're same on each side, you can always take your pencil, hold it where you began, and then take a look on there. Just do a kind of a visual that way, and then take a look that way. That just gives you a little guide. These are very much whimsical style, so they don't have to be exact, but it's just a simple little guide you can do. And then we're going to put the next one underneath. And there is his wings. Now let's go ahead and work on his legs. So his legs have the 3 sections. They have one that's coming up first, so your leg will be drawn up, and then that leg's going to come down, those little legs, and then they have these tiny little feet areas that come off to the side. So they're going to be starting in these parts of your body. So I'm going to start here, kind of like a little rectangle, and then a little rectangle coming down to a little bit of a point, and then it comes out that way. So again, we're going to go up, like a little rectangle up, and then we're going to go down, and we're going to get smaller as we come down, and then their little feelers come up. And that's exactly how you do each of those little legs on each side. There's not a lot of detail in these, or I didn't put a lot of details in my little drawing. And there's his little legs. So we have our bee. It can help too if you want to just draw in the dark part. Now, if you are a pencil drawer, this is a great little sketch to do as a pencil drawing. And we have done those in the past, a pencil and ink drawing, which is a fun little sketch to do. So you can see now where my black part is and where my yellow is going to go on my bee. And that is how you basically do your bee shape. Now to do the honeycomb on the top, the only thing you kind of want to watch when you're doing your the shape you're going for is this shape. It's got a little bit of a hill there, so it doesn't come to a point. And then it's going to go off to the side, and then it will scoop down below is the shape you're going for. And when you draw it, when you draw your sections, you want to come out just a little ways from your line you drew, curve it around, kind of how we did the sections of our body, how we're going to come out just a little bit farther and then come with a slope. And that will really add a little bit more dimension to your honeycomb. So start here, come out a little bit, round it out, round it off to the edges, and do that little bit of a curved line. And do that all the way down to your honeycomb. That will really add a lot of your dimension. Well, now we have the drawing part. Let's go right into the watercolor part. For this particular painting, I'm going to be starting with the black part of my bee. I'm first going to start out wherever I'm going to be putting black on my bee. I'm going to put a little bit of water into that area. So this is going to be a wet on wet technique. So I want to take my brush and go ahead and put some clear water on there. My water's not too clear because I just dipped it in my black. But the idea is to wet my surface first before I put my black on. Drop down here, so I'm going to have a nice loose shade of black. So this is my color black here. I'm using the Paul Rubin colors today, and I'm going to tap that in there, and the water will stay where the color will stay where the water is. So it's not going to go outside of that area if the paper is dry. It will only stay where my paper is wet. So I'm going to go ahead and tap this color in. First layer, and then I'm going to be coming in with a little bit more pigment on the end of my brush straight out of the container. I'm using a dry set, but I do have my little set sitting here, so I'm just going to go directly into my area. I'm going to go ahead and rinse this off, have a little bit more of a dry brush, and I'm coming in just directly to my black, and I'm going to tap that in just a little bit, and hopefully there'll be enough water on there to make a little bit of watercolor magic, that blend on blend that happens with watercolor because my paper is wet, the color is there, and that color will move a lot around, and it won't require a lot to be done by me to get some really interesting looks, even though it's a single color. I will be doing some pen and ink work at the end and adding a little bit more loose detail to my drawings because that's what I like to do with my paintings. I rarely just do a plain one-step watercolor, but you could leave this as a watercolor and not do any of the mixed media pen work if you're not interested in doing that. It's just all the options. Do what makes you happy. You could also add some color pencil in here. You could add some gel pens. There's lots of options in creating these paintings. Let's go ahead and do a little bit of work here. Just a tiny bit of adding some color in. Okay. I'm not wanting that black body to dry all the way. It's still a little damp, and that's good because I want to go ahead and add my yellow in there. So I'm going to be taking a color that's this brighter yellow. It's actually called Indian yellow. I'm going to tap this in now. And those two areas where I touch, since my paper isn't all the way dry, should blend together still, which kind of makes a cool little blended effect without me having to do a lot. So I'm going to just tap that into those areas and see what happens. I don't want to go in too early because my color would just become super muddy. So I do want it to be somewhat dry without not being all the way dry. I want this to dry a little bit more because I don't want to work on that background. Watercolor always wants to flow where your paper is wet. So you do have to give some dry times in between things. While this is drying, I'm going to be working on my flowers. So I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of, I already drew my lines here. If you can kind of see those, I wanted to have this look of that some of my flowers are going in, some are going out. It always looks nice to have a couple different directions. I'm going to simply go in and take a little bit of clear water, and I'm going to be just dropping in a little bit of water, clear water up there. And then I'm going to be tapping in my blue color. I want a real varied area, so I'm going to just pop that in there. These are just a real loose version of a flower, nothing too structured. So there's the blue, and while my blue is still wet, I'm going to pick up a little bit of this purple, and I'm going to be adding that in as well. So I'm going to be tapping this in. So this is a reddish type of red purple kind of. It's got a little bit of red in there, reddish blue color. So this color is called just violet, but I want some of that blue underneath to show, but I do want this violet on the top. I really like how that looks as far as the blending of the colors. So let's go on and continue on working on the flowers. What looks nice when you're doing these flowers is to make sure you're leaving some open spaces so it's not just all one big clump of flowers. So by leaving some open spaces, that's just going to add to the airiness and the pretty quality, the loose quality of these flowers. I'm going to take a little bit of green and pop some of that in for my stems, just here and there to be able to see a little bit of green for my stems. I'll be adding just a little bit more green color as well as a lighter color to be able to add in there. I'm going to take this next lighter green shade down here. I'm just mixing right in my pan here, getting a little bit more pigment than it is water. Give this a tap so I can control that. And I'm going to just be brushing some of that lighter green in just to give a variance in my colors so they're not all the same. I'm doing this in a circle format because I use that circle frame from my embroidery hoop. That's why I'm doing it in the circle. But I kind of like the look. Even if I wasn't putting it in a little circle frame, I do like that look of the round. Okay, I'm going to leave that be. Let's go ahead and pick up a light shade of, so let's just pick a light shade of this kind of a reddish brown color here. Maybe I'll mix it a little bit. I'm just looking for a real light color. Maybe a burnt umber would be great. I want a lot of water in this color. I'm not looking for a lot of tint. So I have a nice little fair color here. The more water you add to your watercolor, the light it's going to be. Now I have this light color here. I definitely want to go ahead and give it a tap because I want not so much inside of my brush. I'm going to be doing that veining inside of the bumblebee's wings. And I'm going to just simply come in and do a veining on there. I'm going to feather it out just real lightly. I need probably a little bit more color than that, especially to make you able to see it. And we're just creating little Ys or little branch shapes inside of there. So I'm coming at the base of my leaf and then coming out. So this would be like the veins and the wings inside of the bee. Make sure you hold that up so you can see that, how I'm creating that. So I'm starting at my base with one line and then pulling out and then making like a Y shape that comes off of there. So it's creating little sections in my wing. I'm gonna come down here and do the same thing. Okay, so I have my little V shapes in there. And while that's wet, I'm gonna pick up Payne's Gray, which is a really beautiful, make sure I'm going the right direction here. Payne's Gray, yeah, it's a navy color. It's kind of a combination of a navy and a gray color together. And I want another light dose of that. So I'm gonna add a lot of water to that, give this a tap. And I'm going to be coming into the section ends now and just floating a little bit of that Payne's Gray where the sections of my wings are. So it gives off to the edges. If you end up like you think your lines are too harsh and you need to soften them a little bit, go ahead and quickly rinse out your brush with clear water, give it a tap, and then come in and just tickle the edges ever so lightly and blend that color out. You can push and pull that color and soften it just a little bit. So what I'm looking for is something that looks like that. So we're going to have a little bit of white paper showing, a few little slight lines, and then that really pretty gray, blue-gray, Payne's Gray showing. So again, I'm coming in with that watered down color. Often we say, how do you paint white? Well, you don't use a lot of white. You have to put in a shadow color. And so the gray, the Payne's Gray, that blue-gray is adding that quality for me. There we go. We have it there. Now the wings will look brighter once I get that background color in, because that will be like a negative painting. So behind it will be darker and my wings will be lighter. Let's go ahead and start on that honeycomb. I'm going to start with that same color of yellow that I used on my bee, but I want to go ahead and kind of dull it a little bit. So I'm going to take a little bit of yellow ochre and mix that in there. I don't want it to be the same yellow as my bee. I'm going to add a little bit more water onto there, give it a tap, and then let's go ahead and lay this color in. Now you might decide you want to have a little bit of a highlight, which means you're going to leave some white of your paper showing. You don't have to do that all the way around in every spot, but you could leave a couple bright highlights and create a little bit of a bright highlight. Okay, let's put this in here. Now when you get to those wings, my paper is drying really fast, so I'm not having to worry about it running into there. But if your wings were still wet, you definitely would want to wait until your paper got dry, because you don't want that color to run into your wings. Okay, so this is wet now. I'm going to pick up a little bit darker color. So I'm going to take this little bit of a reddish brown color, and I'm going to be adding that in there, and I want to darken that up a little bit. So I have this rusty yellow. I added, just mixed it off to the side here on my palette, and I'm going to be coming to the outside, and then on my section where I have it sectioned off, that's going to be kind of that shadow area. I'm going to choose that there's going to be a shadow, a darker shadow area off to my left, and on to my right is where there's going to be more of a highlight color. So I'm just mixing these in there now. Remember that when you're doing watercolor, you always start light and bright and then work your way dark. So these are the beginning stages of painting my shadows. And because that area is wet, my colors will flow together. And where the paper is dry, it won't move there. Okay, so let's give that a little bit of chance to dry, and I will move down to that next section. Now when we get down to these areas where we're going to be touching up against the yellow, we do need to have a difference in our value of color. So we'll need to have some sort of contrast so you can see the difference. And I'm going to go darker because my bee is sitting on top and that honeycomb is behind. So I definitely want to go darker on my picture. It's coming together. Now my top is looking a little bit more rusty than my bottom. So I'm going to take some of this color I added down here. I'm going to put that onto the top too. I don't want it to look like it's too separated and like there's an upper and a bottom. So I do want to make sure I'm working those colors into the other parts that I'm doing. Okay, so we can even go one step darker. We can take a little bit more of that rusty brown colors that we were working with before, add less water, so it's more like a milk consistency, and we can come in and even add a darker shade to the outsides while my paper is still wet. It should blend, and because it's a wet on wet, it should soften, and I shouldn't have super distinct lines there on the edge. But if you do see that your paper, like you're holding too strong of an edge and you want it to be softer, wash your brush out, take a little bit of clean water, and then tickle that edge and see if you can't soften your lines and maybe even lift a little bit of color if you need to. You can see how my white wings are really popping now because that dark color is behind there. So it's even looking even more like white and less like a blue and a light shade of beige. So just by having that contrast of my colors, it starts looking more like white, even though it's not white. Okay, that is pretty much it. I'm going to stop there with my watercolor. Now, of course, you can keep on going, let it dry, see how much more you would like to add. I'm going to keep mine this way. Since I didn't do the one on this one for the rounded, maybe I'll go ahead and finish the background on this. And perhaps I'll just choose to do, let's do something completely different. Let's take a little bit of this rosy color and see where we end up with it. I'm going to be adding that color to the outside and go around my circle. So that's just a totally different look than what my first one. So I'm going to go around by hand. And then, of course, I wouldn't want a lot of contrast on this part. This would be a good area to be able to write some words if you wanted to write some words. Be happy is always a good word to choose, or a good saying when you're doing bees. Be kind. Oh, there's all kinds of things. So I'm going to keep that round shape there. You could always add a little bit more dark to your edges as well. Let's see. Come in here, roll it around. I want my bee to be the star, so I'm not going to be paying too much attention to my background. But I can come in and add just a little bit more dark around the edges if I decide I would like that look. And I do like that look. Maybe a little bit darker around here too. Set off my circle a little bit. Okay, so I'm doing darker than what I thought I was going to do. It's just a big experiment. You know, this little drawing goes fairly quick and the watercolor goes quick. And there's something fun about, or I find fun, is to do it more than once, because each time you do it, you're going to learn something. And you might want to change something from your first one. So go ahead and practice. And that Canson watercolor paper that I use is still considered a student grade paper. It doesn't feel so precious to do one of these if we're just practicing. And the more you practice, the more you're going to refine your watercolor skills and your technique of what you're going to do. Okay, so there he is. I'm going to let this dry, and then I'll come back and I will show you the pen work. My favorite way to do pen work is using the Micron pens. They are permanent ink, so they will stay put once they're dry. It's my favorite way to add some detail. I'm going to come over and do a little bit more adding to my dark areas. Now you can actually go into your bee and make a little bit of scribbly bits in there and make it look like it's a little bit furry. You can add just a tiny bit of that look if you would like. And I like it. I like to scribble, so I'm into anytime I can do a little bit of extra bits, I like to do it. And when I'm doing this part, I'm not looking at being perfect. I like to have very much a hand sketch look. For those who've been following along on my channel, you know I love that hand sketch, real fast look of a quick sketch. And I create that by just having some irregular lines, doubling up on my lines. Nothing has to be perfect on my little pen sketches. So there's my little pen sketch there. I can come in and do a little bit of work on my wings, and I'm not looking to follow them exact. There's a little bit subtle look. You can outline everything if you want. I always think it looks a little bit more like a color book style, but that's a great look too, and it's a fun look to try and do that as well. But this is just I'm looking for more of a hand-drawn look. So you can see where my details didn't necessarily make too much when I'm drawing. I just have the general shapes, and then I can come in and add all of these little bits of extras. But you can see how it's coming to life. And I'm going to do the same thing here, following in and out, doubling up my lines, not necessarily keeping them one. Now you can use some gel pens on this too. There's quite a few of you who follow along who love to use gel pens, mixed media, colored pencils. That works as well too, to add a little bit of that going on. Now I'm going to come in and I'm going to use some gel pens. Why not? So I'm going to take my purple one and I'm going to add just a tiny bit of glitter. Now when you're using gel pens, you need to be aware of where your hand is, because gel pens stay wet longer than what a normal pen does. So you just want to make sure you're keeping track of where your hand is and that you're not running it through your gel pen. So if you're left-handed, you're definitely going to have to keep track of where you have you done your work, so you're not dragging your hand through there. I always am paying attention because I like to jump around on my picture and not necessarily go from top to bottom. So I need to be aware of that and make sure I'm not dragging my hand through there. So this is just a purple gel pen. This set I got is King's Art. I think I just got this at Walmart. So it's an easy set to do, fun to play with and have in your little repertoire of art materials. And let's see. Oh, and then I could use a little bit of my jelly roll, because you know I love my jelly roll. This fluorescent colors are just so much fun to add and play with, and I can make this a little bright. Now I did not do this on my first one, this bright color of look, but I do like bright, so I always do my drawings more than once because I'm practicing to be able to tell you how to draw things and then developing what I would like to develop. I'm also learning and creating every time I draw and prepare something for you. I'm learning something new too, and making my work better. And you make me better by drawing for you. Now I'm going to go ahead and take that one again, and maybe this time I'll just do that sketchy line work around for my circle, make it look like it's imperfect. That way it doesn't have to be a perfect circle, because it's not a perfect circle. There, that looks good. You can also go in and do a little bit of details on the outside. So do a little bit of scattered line. If you're doing this shape, this would make a great card for those of you who like to do cards or have these available to give to someone. This would make a beautiful card. I'd love to get a piece of art like this from someone. So this would make a great card image. Okay, now make sure you sign your work when you get done. Wherever you might want to put it, maybe I'll put it down here. I always like signing in pencil, is how I like to sign mine. So I'll put my name there. So if you are interested in doing the frame, I do have this frame tutorial as a video on my page, and I'll put that link underneath in description so you can easily find the wooden frame. It's just made from a Dollar Tree frame, so it's easy to find. And this is it's a embroidery ring is what I use, and then it comes through the top. Now if you want to use the embroidery rings, you just want to make sure you put it down, and then when you take it out, the key to this, because you need to know where the inside of your ring is. If you draw your picture too big, you won't have it centered right. So I like to go ahead and put my ring down And then I draw lightly for the inside circle, but then I go to the outside and I draw my circle again because that's where I want to cut it. But I need to know on the inside of how big to make it. So that's how you can gauge about how big you would like to do it. And then I just used a little bit of the clear tacky gel to be able to glue the back of my frame. But you can use anything you would like. Now this one went in a frame and I wanted to make sure it wouldn't smudge. So I gave it a clear coat of polyacrylic, just